We've been reporting on the fatal eruption of New Zealand's White Island volcano since Monday. Let's give you a breakdown of the numbers so far. We know now that there were dozens of tourists on the island before it erupted. 6 have been confirmed dead. 9 others are feared to have died. And about 30 have serious burns. Some are so severely injured that they still can't speak. The chief medical officer at New Zealand's National Burns Unit told Radio New Zealand that an estimated 1.2 million square centimetres of replacement skin will be needed for the patients. It's being ordered from the United States. The BBC's health and science correspondent Jame Gallagher has been looking into the treatment that they'll be getting. James, first of all, I want to start with what some might say is a very basic question, but what is skin and why is it so important?
Well, skin's the largest organ in the human body, and one of its biggest roles is obviously to keep the inside of you inside, but to keep the outside out. So all those bacteria and viruses that could cause deadly infections if they got inside the body, our skin is the barrier against it. And so one of the big problems that severe burns patients have is suddenly they don't have that defense anymore, and so there is a very high risk of infection, and that infection can get to the internal organs of the body and into the bloodstream incredibly easily. So that is one of the problems that they're trying to counteract with this donated skin. And
donated skin itself, where does it come from?
Well, it comes from dead people. So when you sign up to an organ donor register and you tick the box to say you want to donate your heart after you die, or your corneas or heart valves or kidneys or other organs, one of the things you can tick is to donate your skin, and it often comes from patients' back or the backs of their legs, where you get those quite big areas, and it's just a very thin strip, a thin layer of the skin, and they're not taking all of your skin, it's just a thin layer of it. It's kind of like comparable to when you get sunburnt and your skin peels. It's kind of like that's the amount of skin that gets taken, and then that goes to a tissue bank, and it's kept, can be kept for several years really.
And we hear about corneas being rejected, kidneys being rejected. Can donor skin be rejected?
It depends. So in the long term, yes. So it's very much a short-term fix. But during kind of like the major burn period, when the skin's still healing, the immune system's quite suppressed, particularly in that area of the burn. And so therefore, that donated skin isn't rejected at the time. But what you have to remember is this isn't the skin that patient's going to have for the rest of their lives. This is about treating them in hospital. What you want to think of it is almost like a living plaster. It's not going to stay on forever. So it's helping the wound to heal, it's helping to keep infections out, it's helping to reduce pain and swelling, but it's not a permanent fix.
I was reading, James, that the nature of the burns that these victims have suffered have been complicated by the gases and the chemicals from the eruption. Has that only complicated the treatment? Because it's different, I was reading, from thermal-only burns.
Well, you do have chemical burns, which are caused by chemical injury, and you have the ones caused by direct heat, and they will be slightly different in terms of how they are treated, because if any of the chemical corrosive elements are still there, then they need to be washed away and cleaned away properly too. But at the most fundamental level, what you're talking about is such severe damage to the skin that it can no longer repair itself, and that's common to both a chemical or a heat-based injury. So no matter which way you're going, you're getting this severe amount of damage that the skin can no longer repair itself, and so you're having to use donated skin in order to protect that part of the body.
And with the case of these victims, would there be certain tests going on? Because how do you go about matching donor skin to the victim?
Well, in the short term, you don't necessarily need to do incredibly precise matching, because the patient's not going to live with the skin forever. The ideal is that you would use the patient's own skin, which obviously would be a perfect match. So in the short term, you don't really worry about that kind of thing, and because the immune system is suppressed, you don't have that immediate risk of rejection. But what the doctors would be doing is they will eventually be transferring their mentality from keeping the patient alive and helping those wounds to recover to how you do the cosmetic side of it. How do you make the skin and the wound look good in the long run? And there they will be taking the skin that's still intact from parts of the patient's body. They can stretch it so that it can cover a larger area, and they would tend to prioritize the parts of the body that are most visible. So if they have severe burns on their face, then they would transplant the skin using skin grafts onto the face to try to improve the kind of like the outward physical appearance.
Such a horrific story. James, thank you for your expertise there. And if you want to read James's piece on where donor skin comes from, pop along to our health and science page.